So you guys have been here for 2 years now.
September 2 years ago, yeah, we moved in.
And tell us about how you came across this place. That's a pretty interesting story.
Well, we were looking to get the railway crew quarters at Yellowdine for storage of gear, so that we could take people to camp in the wilderness, mostly at Weeawannee, which is north of Yellowdine. And we went to see the owner in order to talk about buying the crew quarters, and he said, yeah, you can have it, but you've got to buy the roadhouse as well for about $450,000. We didn't have that sort of money, so we came back from Kalgoorlie fairly disappointed. And I said to Anna, we'll call in the number 7 tank, you can get water out of the pipeline there with Boiler Billy. And we took a wrong turn, and the turn was here. And we arrived and Anna said, this is it. And it was obviously an abandoned sort of property that hadn't been used for a long time. We did the title search, and Anna wrote to the owner and talked about our ideas and what needed to happen, and eventually the property was sold. The town site was sold to Anna, and we've moved from there with dongers and fixing stuff up and aligning stuff. Anna waves her arms and I do things.
Yeah, I've got the big picture and you know how to make it happen.
So it's a pretty amazing place. What is it that you're setting up here, or that you've set up and that you're trying to set up?
We're calling it a base camp from which to experience the wilderness and explore desert spirituality, either alone and in community. Yeah. So that's what we're setting up, a place where people can come to, where they've got the very basics of life, like running water and sewage systems and phone and power, in case they're on a ventilator or a dialysis machine or whatever whatever ability constrictions they have. They can still get out into the wilderness to the amount that they can and to experience it, and then sit around the campfire or around the table and talk about what's that doing for them, and get a sense of their own spirit in relation to the spirit of this land.
And there are some people who are pretty happy to walk out into the wilderness, out into the treed and scrub country, and come back and go out for a day and on their own with a compass and whatever. There are other people who are absolutely paranoid about leaving camp, and then who are happy to walk along the pipeline and look at the bush, knowing that the pipeline's not going to move and they can turn around and come back. So our aim's to find out where people are at and how we can extend their understanding of being in touch with the earth, irrespective of their initial ability. We don't even like here talking about people with disabilities, because we're all disabled in some sort of way. And so we have what we're calling all ability facilities. In other words, if they're the sort of thing that somebody in a wheelchair or a walking frame or just a walking stick can use, then people who don't need those supports can also use it. So they're all ability facilities.
They're in the process of becoming.
And in the process of becoming, yeah.
It's a work in progress. So, and we are licensed by the Archbishop to be chaplains to Koora Retreat Centre, which is the company we call this place, and so people understand that up front that's what we are, both Anglican priests. We have our daily services, and it's a prayer ministry we're offering. I do spiritual direction with people, and people come here expecting to be who they are in front of God, and the God's presence in this place.
And part of our aim is then to provide some infrastructure for people who might want to go and camp out in the bush. So when there was a women's walking retreat on some time ago, and they wanted to be at a base camp out in the bush, so we took out water and the shower and the fireplace and set it up, and toilet and tents, and then they did their thing, and we packed it up and came home.
And we had a men and boys retreat, and they did physical activities and played in the mud, had mud baths in the reservoir, and had good times, and had very few showers and had a good time. All four things.
Important male bonding.
They did.
and part of what we're doing also is having some concern from the environment, the fragile environment in which we live. and if we are to continue to live here, we want to stop, not stuff the country up, and also contribute to fixing up bits of the country here that have been severely degraded by people who only saw this as a stop-off point on their way to places like Kalgoorlie, where they were hoping to make lots of money from the extraction of gold. And this particular area, which is on the edge, well, actually the town site's within Barabin National Park, is fragile country, and the federal government call this country
Economically unexploitable.
economically unexploitable. In other words, it's no good to extract money to make a living, and that suits us.
That's why we're here and nobody else is.
It's a very positive thing.
Yeah, and our neighbours are at Bullabulling,
100 kilometres.
100 kilometres away, where there's a hotel, and there would have been neighbours to here at Barabin and Durai and a couple of the other railway stations on the way up, but since the railway's gone from here, the narrow gauge, and has now become the standard gauge about 37 to 40 kilometres north, the only constant human activity here is people travelling along Great Eastern Highway from the eastern states and to Kalgoorlie and to Perth.
So when people come, we buy the food and we have suggested menus that go with the camping fire and the facilities here, but they self-manage that. They prepare their own meals, and that's all part of the experience of camp, the camp structure.
And sometimes they need some inputs about how to use camp ovens, like you don't get the fire red hot and burn the bottom off the oven. And that cooking here requires time. You can't just stick stuff in a microwave or set a timer and go out walking, coming back expecting the meal to be ready. So there's got to be some planning and some easing back on the city timetable.
We had a group of Aboriginal kids from the Coolgardie Aboriginal School out last week, and they were helping with mulching the seedlings and watering them and getting the mud out of the reservoir, because they're part of the bushrangers from the Department of Environment, and you know they really valued being out here in the bush, even from Coolgardie, which is a tiny town, tiny place.
And they call Coolgardie the city, and it's good to be out in the bush.
And so we got kangaroo for them to eat. They love kangaroo. So, but these people here who are from Perth College, I don't think they like kangaroo at all. Just different people, you know. They like.
And you mentioned before that you are both Anglican priests and that you do a service every day. But something I've noticed that's possibly that's not it's
not compulsory.
You're not compulsory, and you're all accepting of any religion or.
Well, no religion
backgrounds.
at all. Every human being is anything that has life and breath or water in it is got God in it. So we accept all of that and try and encourage people to develop their own spiritual literacy. We have our own language and we have our own rituals and stories and we things that inform our spirit life, but they're not necessarily going to be the receptacles that hold a sustenance for everybody. So we're really open to finding what is the structure and form that will help anybody have words for, celebrate, repeat, pass on their spiritual experiences that they have here. And they're going to be earth-based ones. That's why we've got on the gate that we're the Earth-Based Centre for Christian Spirituality, because that's what they're going to experience, the great voice of the one that created by voice in this land.
And it is the thing that all human beings share is the earth.
The earth that we're made from. So we like to eat food and drink water that falls on this land, and food that grows out of this land is lovely too, because then we become part of this place. Its molecules are within us, and so we're part of it too.
And one of the ways of knowing that a person has a spirit, in whatever way you understand that, is when they're dead. It's quite clear that something has left the body. The body is no longer the whole person, and that part which has left the body, we talk about as the spirit, the thing that gives life and animation and makes that person real and able to relate to us. And I guess out here in the wilderness you can extend that to in very observed ways to the animal kingdom here. And I mean, no one would say that those 3 camels parked up haven't got spirit. And no one would say that that bird hasn't got spirit with the pardalote, and it's chirping and it's getting on with new life, producing numerous young
And that eagle
pardalote.
that was soaring above us this morning just reminds us how we...
And the bee eaters down from New Guinea with their colourful wings, and the Major Mitchell parrots with the...
Mind you, we were saying a psalm yesterday and we were praying for the life of all God's creatures except flies, we said.
But you know, they're
so
actually...
we're not all accepting.
and we need to grasp that in a sense they are entitled to be here, and if they weren't here, the flies, there'd be lots of biological problems. There'd be muck mounding up everywhere. So all those sorts of things have a purpose. And our aim is in an uncomplicated way to get people who often are not in an environment where they can observe all that stuff, and they only see man-made stuff and inanimate structures like buildings and air conditioners and cars and roads, to begin to get in touch with that, and as a result in touch with their own spirituality.
And their own humanness.
And their own humanness.
We forget that. We put on all these personas and we have ways of being popular and ways of being acceptable in the city, but out here that gets stripped away. It doesn't work. It's of no value, and suddenly you're face to face with who you really are, and that's really important to know.
And there's some fairly practical things about life out here that people can grasp in a very real way. In cities, when people die, undertakers take over, and the body becomes remote from everything else they're doing. Up here, when something dies, within a week it's gone.
The ants and the beetles,
the ants,
fungus,
the beetles,
flies.
the eagles, the flies, and that in fact is what happens to us, despite an attempt to mummify or embalm or continue. And there's some very real practical understandings of that, and if people began to grasp that, then I'm sure they'd have a much healthier and more loving and joyful understanding of the totality of life and their ability to take a full part in it while they're alive.
Probably the most crucial part of it.
So there's time up here for reflection, and it enables some people to get in touch with their real fears and to see that in fact the fears are really unfounded, and that they can live in peace with spiders and insects and flies and other stuff that often they've just got unreal fears about. We've got beautiful little rock dragons, lizards that are around here, and some people are just paranoid about those. Until they're given the opportunity to get up close and look and see that they're colourful and they're about their business and that they're not going to cause them any trouble. Most of the snakes that are around here are quite harmless, and in fact very hard to find snakes because of the noise we make.
I love getting out in the bush. Even just this base camp has a smell of people about it, so getting out of the bush and you start to smell all of the natural things, it's really nice. You have to get out of here, even from here. And I go away for a day a week into the bush by myself for 24 hours retreat every week, usually Wednesday night and Thursday, because if we're running a retreat centre, I figure we've got to do it ourselves.
You've got to be able to retreat.
Yeah.
Well, it seems like you've set up, you've set up and setting up a really beautiful utopia here, and you've accepted us, and we've had a really great time.
Yeah, we've
really
enjoyed it.
excited to see what happens over the next couple of years.
Yeah, good.
There'll be a bit happen. Anna waves her arms and things are going to happen.